Today's episode of The Real Deal with Damian Adams is brought to you by the 3-Point Conversion. The 3pointconversion.com is the perfect website for all your sports needs. If you need fast updates on football, basketball, boxing, NASCAR, horseshoes, spades, pick them up, stick them up. Anything you need updates on, the 3pointconversion.com is definitely your site for that. Also a great site for articles and great writers from all over the nation on the 3pointconversion.com. So if you're not checking it out, you're losing out. So go ahead and check out the 3pointconversion.com. Thank you for listening to The Real Deal with Damian Adams. This is Real Sports Talk for the Real Sports Fan, and I definitely appreciate all you Real Sports fans who are listening right now. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, thank you. Really do appreciate it. Please do not forget to share the podcast with your friends and also give us that 5-star rating, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th. That 5-star rating and review will definitely be appreciated. If you're listening on Spreaker Radio on the 3-Point Conversion station, we definitely appreciate you as well, because the 3-Point Conversion station is where fans' opinions matter. So if you think this show is hot and is the best thing ever, do not be conservative, do not be constructive. Go ahead and let us know what you think the show is. Let us know that you love the show so much. If you think the show can improve, please be constructive. I do have a gentle soul, but let me know how I can improve so I can become great at this. I'm very excited about today's show. I have a special guest in the building. She's, I guess, no longer a guest. She's like family because she's been on the show so many times between her regular appearances and appearances on bonus episodes that is almost called The Real Deal with Damian Adams and Kelly at this point because she's been on so many times. But her name is Kellie Ruttar. She is half of the Red Zone Live with Kelly and Rashawn. Excellent show that you can catch each and every week on Blog Talk Radio. Love working with her. I'm excited to have her on today's episode. What's going on, Kelly?
Hey, Damian, I am so happy to be here. I've been on a little bit of radio hiatus. I just moved myself into a brand new house, so it feels so good. This is kind of like my debut after my hiatus getting back on air, so I'm glad I could do that with you.
Well, that's what's up, man. I got the exclusive. I feel special. So for people who may not be familiar with you, can you tell them about the Red Zone Live, where they can find it, and also where they can find you on social media?
Absolutely. You can check out the Red Zone Live every Friday with me and my co-host, Rashawn. We are on Blog Talk Radio. You can listen live, blogtalkradio.com/momentum shift. You can also check us out on demand anytime your heart desires on our sponsor website, goingfor2.com. It's going, FOR, the number 2.com/momentum shift. And you can find me on social media. I am on Twitter. I am on Facebook. It's KELLIERUTTAR. And you can find my show at The Red Zone Live. And our Twitter is great. Our media manager, Ralph, he really lights it up on there. He's hilarious. So follow the show, follow me, and follow my co-host, Rashawn. He's pretty awesome as well.
Yes, I definitely ditto all of that. Do you say I ditto all of that, or did you say ditto? I think it's just ditto, huh? So ditto. So I feel the same way. That's what I'm trying to say. I feel the same way, and I really appreciate Kelly being on the show today. And I love having her on the show when sports and social issues cross over, when the lines get blurred, and you have to have somebody with a great perspective and nuance to be able to unblur those lines and bring a good viewpoint to it. So, of course, today's episode we have to start off with the NFL changing their national anthem policy. So the new policy is, if you're on the field, you have to stand up and show, quote unquote, respect for the flag while the national anthem is playing. If you do not want to participate in that manner, you can stay in the locker room. If you are on the field and you do not stand up, you kneel or sit down, or do something that's deemed to be, quote unquote, disrespectful, you will be punished and your team will be fined. How do you feel about this policy, Kelly?
Well, what first strikes me, and the way that you put the emphasis on the words respect and disrespect, that's the first thing. I don't feel like any of the players have in any way disrespected the national anthem. If you think about things that are signs of respect, taking a knee is a very valid way of showing that you are being respectful. We're not talking about players that are chanting their dissent during the anthem. They're not talking. They're not drawing attention to themselves in any way other than the fact that they are refusing to participate. So to me, saying that you must show respect to the national anthem, nobody's been disrespecting it at all. So I'm very against it in the way that it is worded that way. Now, when it comes down to it, I've got a couple big ticket hot button issues for me personally. One of them is social injustice, and then the other one, of course, is freedom of speech, the right to protest, the right to free press. You and I, as members of the media, we love that right. We like to be able to speak our mind, and I feel like we tell the truth, and everybody's truth is a little bit biased, but I like the fact that as members of the media, we can take facts, and we can use those facts to support our argument. So that being said, when I saw the new policy, my first thought, however, was that this is actually a chance for players to kind of come together in a show of solidarity. Talk about a football team. They're not a team. They're a family. They're a band of brothers in the locker room and on the field. And I asked myself, what a great way for some of these players to show that, and they can see whole teams refuse to take the field together as a sign that they don't like this policy, that they don't want to be, in essence, silent over this issue. And I know that for you, when Donald Trump got involved and the entire issue of free speech started to come up, you were afraid that the original message was going to get lost. The issue of social injustice, what started all of this. The fact that black men are being shot down by police in startling numbers compared to white men or members of other races, and that there's no excuse for it. So I would like to see us as members of the press, the players on their own personal, if they have a personal Twitter account, social media, in interviews, I would like them to continue to push this issue to the forefront. But I think players that have not yet participated in any form of protest, I think now is the time for them to come together in solidarity and show that they do stand or kneel, as it may be, with their teammates against this issue. I think that we need to not let the public forget that this is an issue of racial injustice in this country. And it's startling to me. When this came out, again, everyone started talking about it. I started re-looking at some of the figures, some of the statistics of racial injustice, and some of them are just frightening in the way they are. And I know that a lot of people might be thinking, what does this white girl care about this? But, like you said, Damien, you and I, we're like family. My co-host, Rashawn, he is the closest thing to a brother I have besides my own brother. I love that man, with all my heart, in a completely platonic way, mind you. Rashawn and I have never had any kind of romantic anything going on, never will. But I love him just the same. And it's scary to me that something like that could happen to anyone that I know and care about, because there is no rhyme or reason to some of these men who have been victims of this social injustice. And what became really scary to me with the statistics is in 2017, there was 987 instances where police used fatal force. Of those 987, 751 of those instances were times when there was no mental illness in the picture. And when it comes down to it, I have no problem with a cop doing his job. If a cop is in danger, if it's him or the bad guy or another innocent bystander, I have absolutely no problem with a police officer drawing down and shooting someone that is in immediate danger. No problem at all. The 751 of those instances of fatal force, there was no mental illness involved. When you break it down and you look at people that were shot down when they were unarmed. Out of those, 22 of them were white, 17 of them were black, out of the unarmed, no mental illness people. Now, I mean, you may say, well, there's more white people. But if you think about it, black people, you only make 13% of our country. That's it. 13%. So for there to be a difference of 17 to 22 between, a minority race and then the majority race, that's absolutely scary to me. And then if you look at those numbers even further, you can break it down. If anybody hasn't checked it out yet, go to the Washington Post database on police killings. You can break it down any way you want to get true and factual statistics. If you look at suspects that were fleeing on foot from police, so they could have had a weapon, but they were running away. They were trying to get away from police. So in essence, they were shot in the back when they were running away. Out of those, there was 108 people that were killed in that manner. 34 were white, 37 were black. So more times a black man was shot in the back by police while trying to run away. If we look at instances where a body camera was used, out of the 751 uses of fatal force where there was no mental illness involved, only 67, that's it, 67 of the instances were caught on body camera. The rest of them, there is no video evidence to show exactly what happened. We have eyewitness testimony, that's it. No cameras. Out of those, the ones that were caught on camera, 17 of those people were white, 29 of them were black. And then if we look at actual what I consider justified killings, when it was an active threat and the suspect had a gun and they were not in the act of fleeing, when they were, in an actual standoff with the police, 123 white, 61 black. So yet body camera shows 29 black, 17 white. Unarmed shows 22 white, 17 black. Running away, 37 black, 34 white. My question is, if only 67 of these issues were caught on body camera, how many times did something happen where there was no evidence and no witnesses, and they were able to cover it up and not call it a police shooting? In instances of body camera, the blacks were much in the majority when it comes to killings. Please, people, educate yourself. If you think that these NFL players are in any way disrespecting our servicemen and women, they're absolutely not. They are trying to give a voice to these people that people have forgotten about. They want these other people out there that are getting shot down on the streets, our brothers, our sisters, our friends, our family. They want them to have a voice, and they want answers to this. They want punishment for people that are in the wrong. So it is, like I said, it's a huge hot button topic for me. I could go on and on for hours with various statistics, but I probably bored people with numbers enough. But I don't want the message to get lost. I know you don't. Free speech is another huge issue. And when the president of the United States of America is trying to shut up people's right to peacefully protest, that's a problem to me too. But I think that's probably an issue for a different show.
Yeah, no, what you said was very eloquently put. I love how you broke it down with the statistics. And with this being a sports show, the people who listen to the show will understand statistics and how those measure up. So I think that was a very, very effective way to break down your point. Now for me, I try my hardest to look at it from both sides. And I wrote an article for the 3pointconversion.com on the new NFL policy. And I start off by, well, not the beginning, but towards the middle, I talk about how I understand this from a business perspective. Because, unfortunately, the majority of NFL fans will agree with this decision and will think it's the NFL's way of showing how patriotic it is, of showing that we respect the flag, we're all American, we're the American game, this is what America should be, stand up for the flag and the national anthem. And it just is really bewildering to me that people can fall for that it's something that is so easily put into that realm of patriotism. I just don't understand how easy it is to fool some people. And I'm not saying that people are stupid, the ones that agree with the decision to make people stand up or go in the locker room. But you have to be somewhat blind to the facts. Like before 2009, this wasn't a thing. Like you could be out there for the national anthem, but if you weren't, it wasn't a thing. If somebody was sitting down, wasn't noticed. If people weren't there, it wasn't noticed. 2009, NFL saw they could make money off of it. And that's when it became a thing. And I was in the Navy at the time when it became a thing. So we would go to games, and it was a thing to make sure that people showed us respect. And I was a rookie at the time in the Navy. So it felt weird that people who didn't even know I didn't even do anything yet were showing me the utmost respect just for having on a uniform. So when you talk about do your homework, I feel like the people need to do their homework on how this actually started and why Colin Kaepernick, started to kneel. Like you said, the reason they started to kneel was the injustices against minorities, mainly police brutality against African Americans. And as an African American male that watches this league that is over 75% black, it's a slap in the face when you say, if you're not going to do what we want you to do, we don't want to see you. Basically, it's a big fuck you. Like, hey, if you're not going to run this ball, throw this ball, intercept this ball, and shut up and make your money, fuck you, and go somewhere else. And I feel like the players can really show their power by maybe sitting out a game if they really feel that strongly about it. Or, like you said, everybody stay in the locker room. What if there's one game where both teams just stay in the locker room? And they say even if they don't feel that strongly about the initial issue that I don't want to get lost and that you don't want to get lost, if it's freedom of speech they feel strongly about, stay in the locker room for that. Take a stand for something that you feel passionate about. And make sure that it's noticed. And the people who are so offended by people kneeling during the national anthem, during the anthem next year, when it's played, go outside, stand out with your hand over your heart towards your flag that you should have over your house since you're so patriotic. But you're not going to do that. You're going to be at home, sitting on the couch, eating Doritos while the anthem is playing. So let's not be hypocritical about this as if you're outside, because you're not supposed to stand up inside, for people who don't know. So if it's in a dome, we're not supposed to be standing up anyway. But if you go outside, stand up for the anthem, hand over your heart, or shut up. But I don't want to spend too much time on this. I do want to talk actual sports. And your Cleveland Cavaliers are now in the NBA Finals for the fourth year in a row. They beat the Boston Celtics in 7 games. What were your thoughts on that series? Were you ever scared at any point that Cleveland would not make it to the finals this year?
I mean, I'm a true fan, and I'm always optimistic when it comes to my teams. I never count one of my teams out until it's statistically impossible for them to make it. But, I mean, I'm not going to lie. This year, I was a little more worried about their chances of making it back to the finals than I was all of the other years. I mean, if you look at it, the Cleveland Cavaliers have dismantled their team twice this season. Of course, for Game 7, Kevin Love was out. I was a little bit concerned with that. LeBron James has been carrying his team on his back just like he always does. And I thought, this series going to 7 with how many games it went to before, I thought he was going to be tired. I wasn't sure if he was going to have enough gas in the tank, but thankfully he did. So I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit scared, but I always had faith in the team. I knew they'd get there.
Yeah, I definitely was concerned for the Cleveland Cavaliers in this series. Now, when they went down 2-0, I was like, okay, Boston won their games at home, and Boston isn't the best road team, or they haven't been in the playoffs at least. So I was like, okay, Cleveland can win both games, and then they'll get that momentum going into Game 5. But when I saw them lose Game 5 in the fashion in which they lost it, I was like, okay, this is different. they really can't beat this team on the road. They can't find a way for their role players to step up. George Hillses and J.R. Smiths of the world just weren't there. And usually those players will show up at least for one road game, and they did in Game 7. But usually it's before that, especially in the Eastern Conference playoffs. But this year was different even from the first round. They had to go 7 games just to get past the Pacers. And, of course, the Raptors, their heart was stolen by LeBron James, 4 or 5 years ago. So that series, of course, was a sweep. But once we saw that first round series, it was like, okay, we really have a different playoffs this year when it comes to Eastern Conference. And I think Boston really showed that coaching, defense really matters. They have talent, of course. Jason Tatum, young rookie, who was their best scorer after Kyrie and Hayward were out. But you can't depend on a rookie in those moments. Even though he had a great Game 7, got him a poster that will live forever over LeBron James, you have to have someone else step up. You can't have Terry Rozier go 0 for 10 from the three-point line. That's when you saw that Game 7 jitters. Terry Rozier's been great all playoffs. Game 7 against LeBron James goes 0 for 10 from the three-point line. So that's when you see the youth come out. But we didn't see it in time to be secure in knowing Cleveland would go to the finals. And my question for you is on Boston. Next year they have a few free agents. Greg Monroe, Marcus Smart, Aaron Baines, and Shane Larkin. Of course, the big one out of there is Marcus Smart. Do you think Boston is already a favorite for next year when you think about getting Kyrie back, Gordon Hayward, the emergence of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum? Or is Boston already the frontrunners in the Eastern Conference for next season?
I mean, if you think about it, if you think of what that team did in the playoffs, without Hayward, without Kyrie Irving, I think Boston is downright scary. I do think that they are going to be a front runner going into this season, or next season rather. I don't really think that there's anything they need to do to improve that squad other than to just keep them healthy. I think that after his rookie season, Jason Tatum is going to end up being a scary little player out there. And with my team being in the East, I'm afraid of a lot of the young talent that's coming out of the East. They've been saying for years the Eastern Conference is weak. None of these teams can match up against the Western Conference, blah, 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 blah. Everybody knows, and I'm not denying it, that the Western Conference has been the hot seat of talent in the NBA for years now, but the East is coming back. We are on the rise. Between the young talent in Boston, on my co-host Rashawn's 76ers, there's a lot of young talent in the Eastern Conference, so look out west. We're going to overtake you. And, for Boston, I think all they need to do is just keep people healthy, and they're going to have a scary squad, and they're going to be front runners next year. Definitely. And that is even assuming that LeBron James does stay in Cleveland. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen, but it's not getting any younger. And the guys coming in, the young kids coming in, they're proving they can ball.
Definitely. With Boston, like you say, they just have to get healthy. I do think Marcus Smart is a very important part to that team. They do need to re-sign him. Now, they have some big money contracts on the books. I didn't realize until today when I looked at the contracts that Gordon Hayward made $29 million this year. Like, good Lord.
That's for vacation.
Yeah, that's a lot of money to play 5 minutes in the season. Of course, he would much rather play the whole season. But, man, if I'm going to break my leg, I'd rather make $29 million doing it than what I make now. I'll tell you that much. But so that contract that he has still has 3 more years on it. Kyrie's still making almost $20 million. Those are your 2 big money contracts. So you still have some room to sign Marcus Smart. You might have to overpay for him. What he does for a team isn't going to be pretty, right? Sometimes he's going to take shots that you're at home like, why would you take that shot? You're not a good shooter, Marcus. Stop doing that. But then after he takes a horrible 3, somehow he goes between 4 people and gets an offensive rebound. He takes 2 charges in a row. He gets 3 steals. He makes an excellent pass. He does all these small things that may not go in the stat sheet or may not go in the part of the stat sheet that we all notice. But he's very important to that team. And even though he'll be deeper in the rotation next year, once they get everybody back, you still need that type of player. So I think he's very important. You have to re-sign him. probably let go of the other three players that I mentioned. But you're right. This team is scary. Philadelphia is scary. Milwaukee with a competent coach, scary. So I think the Eastern Conference is definitely on the rise. And we didn't even mention the Wizards, who, if they're healthy, they're scary. There's a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference, man. I think the Western Conference is still atop, but the gap is closing. Now, speaking of the Western Conference, Houston, Golden State win 7 games. Golden State was able to pull it out. What were your thoughts on this series? Did you get pulled up in the hype like me? Because I was like, Houston's going to win this series now. I believe in them. I was really all in on Houston. At first, I wasn't. Like, after game 2, even though Houston won that game, it felt like kind of a fluke to me. And I was like, okay, Golden State's going to win this in 5. But then once Houston was able to win game 4 and then win game 5, I was really... Before Chris Paul got hurt, I was really like, oh, man, Houston's got this. They can definitely do this. Did you get pulled into the hype as well?
I mean, I knew that Golden State was going to win it in the end. I was trying so hard to get pulled into the hype, but I have to be honest, Game 7, I didn't even get a chance to watch it. I have no TV or internet yet at my new house. That's coming tomorrow, thankfully. So I didn't even get to see it. You know, I was watching the stats on my phone, but I was so exhausted from all of the hard work I've been doing. I fell asleep before the end of the game, so I didn't even know that Golden State won until this morning, which makes me a very bad NBA fan. But yes, I mean, as a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, I am such a hater of the Golden State Warriors. I was rooting very hard for Houston, but I really didn't think they had a shot in hell. But then Golden State looked like they were falling apart. Houston looked like they were going to be able to pull it off. James Harden was doing his thing, and I wanted to see them win. I really wanted to, but in my brain, I knew that they weren't going to be able to do it. The thing that excites me, though, about this series and how well that Houston played is they've tired out Golden State a little bit now. They've kind of exposed them. They didn't have as easy of a road to the finals as they usually do. So now maybe it'll be a little bit more of an even playing field when they face my Cavaliers.
I definitely can see that. I think it actually may have worked in the reverse, where now they've gone through this series where they really got challenged, and they proved to themselves they were able to overcome adversity. Ever since they've gotten Kevin Durant, they haven't been in any adverse situations until this series. And now they know, like, okay, we overcame a team that was really good, that we believe is better than Cleveland. We should have no problem with Cleveland. Now, it may make them too cocky, but I think it's going to work in a way where their confidence is going to be sky high because they know we can overcome an adverse situation and not have to be front runners all the time. This series was great. I thought it was way better than the Boston-Cleveland series. The Boston-Cleveland series had good storylines. It's like, oh, man, LeBron James down 2-0. Oh, LeBron James is down to elimination in Game 6. Well, what happened? It was great storylines, but the games themselves were not that good at all, especially games 1 through 6. Game 7 had its moments. You know, like I said, I mentioned the dunk that Tatum had over LeBron earlier. It was close pretty much till like midway through the fourth quarter pretty much. And that's when LeBron, took over and they pulled away. But for games 1 through 6, literally whoever was home was winning. There were no lead changes in the fourth quarter until Game 7. So the series itself, as far as the games weren't that good, just good. It was compelling as far as the story. But for Houston and Golden State, the games themselves were close. Now, some of them weren't well played, but I think that was a condition of both teams being so evenly matched. You think about the fact that Houston was able to make Golden State into an isolation team somewhat, make them change their game up a little bit just because they were so good on defense, and making them not get those backdoor cuts that they normally get and all the things they do with their offense that confuse other teams. Houston was able to switch off the ball and do all the things they makes Golden State well. They were able to take those things away. And I think that Houston is in a great position for next year, but they have a lot of free agents. They have Chris Paul, Trevor Ariza, Clint Capella, Luke Mabute, like saying that name, and Gerald Green. Now, of course, Chris Paul, you can say if Chris Paul's healthy, Houston wins this series. That's something that you can honestly say, and you may believe, because they were up 3-2. Chris Paul's defensive intensity definitely was infused into this team. So you have to re-sign him, but do you re-sign him for that 5 years, $200 million contract? Or he's eligible. I think he is eligible for that one. If you were Houston for Chris Paul, are you trying to open up the whole bag for the 5 years? Are you trying to negotiate something shorter? What are you doing for Chris Paul at age 33?
I mean, at age 33, I definitely think that they need to re-sign him. I think that Chris Paul is a huge piece of that team. The way that he and James Harden play off each other, it's magical on the field. You need to keep them together. I think that they need to re-sign him, and he needs to do like what LeBron does, go for those 1-2 year contracts, so that way when the salary cap goes kind of high again in a few years, you can take advantage of more money. So that's what I think they should try and do, but if he's not willing to do that sort of thing, if he wants a guarantee because he is 33 years old, then I think you do sign him. I think that what they need to do on top of that is I think that they need to look for, a little bit of young talent that they can get maybe on the cheap. Somebody, I don't know exactly who's free agents where yet, so I haven't, looked at a who, but I think they need to find one of those balls of potential that's kind of just wasting away on a team somewhere, and they need to bring in someone young to that team too. I think that would really help them. They need to have that mix of veteran leadership and then add some of that young potential talent as well, kind of how DeMar DeRozan was a few years ago, before he became a big name, that sort of thing. That's what I think they need to do, and you can get somebody like that on the cheap. So I think that they definitely need to re-sign Chris Paul.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. They have to re-sign Chris Paul. Like I say, his leadership and his defensive intensity is priceless. It's something that you cannot buy from other players. Now, I think that Trevor Ariza at 32 is somebody they might let go. Gerald Green, even though he's 32, he's like a youthful 32. With Trevor Ariza, you kind of feel the age a little bit, even though he's still a good defender at his age. He was horrible in Game 7. I forgot how many three-pointers he missed, but he definitely was a big part of that 27 in a row that they missed. I think they need to also, their philosophy does work. Threes and layups. It works. Threes, layups, and free throws. But there's times when you have to adjust. And during that game, there were a few foul calls that were missed that went Golden State's way. That kind of shook the momentum as well. But when you see shot after shot after shot not falling, and if they're playing you to where they're taking the three away and they're packing the rim, take what they're giving you. If they're giving you the mid-range, take the points. Because I understand 3 is better than 2, but 2 is way better than 0. Sometimes you have to take those mid-range shots. Take the low floaters. Take what's there. And don't be so stuck on your philosophy. Like, I hate it when great coaches, because they've had so much success with a philosophy, get stuck in that philosophy and don't know how to change it with the times or change it with that game in particular. We saw with Phil Jackson in New York. He still wanted to do the triangle offense, even though it doesn't work against today's defenses because there's no longer an illegal defense. You can zone up everything, and the triangle gets kind of boggled up in that way. With Mike D'Antoni, he created this new system in Phoenix originally that transformed the NBA, but now everybody's caught up to it. Sometimes you got to adjust. It's no longer a new thing that everybody's like, oh my God, they're going in 7 seconds or less. It's, we can do this too. You have to adjust and make those adjustments. So I think that's something they have to think about, especially in the playoffs. In the regular season, you can check up all those threes because people don't have the time to adjust to what you're doing like they do in a playoff series. The playoff series is a war. You have so much time to adjust to what the other team's doing. By the time game 6, 7 come around, you all know each other's tricks. It's all about who wants it more. And unfortunately, the guy who wanted it the most, Chris Paul, couldn't play. So I think they are in a great position. Clint Capella is somebody who's going to be expensive. He only cost $2 million this year. He's going to be a max guy next year. Do you re-sign him? Or do you try to go after LeBron James because he's going to be out there and Houston's one of those places that's been rumored for LeBron? Do you think, it's kind of a crazy question, but they made the conference finals and you can say that Chris Paul, healthy, maybe they win. Do you ruin that chemistry by going after LeBron, who is 33 years old, even though he's an alien and may not age? Or do you try to keep this together no matter what?
I'm not just saying this as a Cavaliers fan. This is me being completely objective. But I don't think LeBron would work on that team. I don't think that the way that team is ran, that he would be able to go in there and they would be successful. I don't know how well that he would work with James Harden or with Chris Paul. And I don't know. And then if you do that, if you go after LeBron and pretty much you're telling Chris Paul, hey, we're not going to have you anymore, and then LeBron doesn't work out, then what? It's kind of like saying, fuck you to Chris Paul, and then if LeBron says no, then you're like, oh, shit, no, never mind, we want to keep you. So I don't think that they should get in that race because I don't think that it's somewhere that LeBron would legitimately consider. Of course, I don't know the inner workings of LeBron's mind, so I could be completely wrong on that. But just based on everything that I know of LeBron, I don't think that he would legitimately coexist.
That's a very good point, because the way their team is made to be run by the guards, right? And LeBron essentially can be point guard, but do you have the talents of a Chris Paul and James Harden not on the ball anymore, to have LeBron be the one to drive and have everybody else work off of him? I think they would eventually find it out, but it is something that would take time. And you do have a system right now with these players that works perfectly and almost got you to the NBA Finals. And you lost to an all-time great team in Golden State. So I think it's very interesting to think about if they would keep this together or go after the bomb of getting LeBron James. Now, speaking of LeBron James, he is in the finals for the 8th year in a row, which is absolutely nuts, especially to do that today. You know, the only players who have done that were on the 1960s Celtics. And, back then the NBA was not as talented as it is now by, a long shot. So the NBA Finals, or you can call it the Cavalier and Warrior family reunion, as this is the 4th year in a row that these two teams will be meeting. It's going to look a little different this time. No Kyrie Irving. If you want to recap it, first time they met was 2015, where LeBron had to carry, Deladova and the other players out there during that series because Kyrie and Kevin Love.
What's that about Delly? Cleveland loves Delly.
He's a great hustle player. He's a great hustle player, can make some threes for you, make some nice passes. He's a nice player. But he's not who you want starting against Steph Curry in the NBA Finals. And that's what happened in 2015 when Kyrie went out in the first game with the kneecap. And they lost in 6. But I still believe LeBron James should have been Finals MVP, leading the Finals in all points, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals. That's nuts. He should have got Finals MVP, but Andre Iguodala got Finals MVP that season just because he was able to stay in front of LeBron, I guess. That's what he did. He was someone who... He was the guy assigned to LeBron, so he got Finals MVP, even though LeBron did what he wanted to do. I don't get it. But for 2016, awesome series, all-time classic, win 7 games. We saw LeBron step over Draymond, rub his nuts on his head. Draymond got offended by that. And Draymond got suspended for Game 6. It was Game 5 or Game 6. Game 6, I believe. That he got suspended for. Oh, it was Game 5, excuse me. Game 5 they got suspended for.
It was 5. Yeah, you're right. It's 5.
That turned the series around. They were down 3-1, famously. Cleveland was. Came back. LeBron and Kyrie had some of the greatest games ever. Game 5, they both scored over 40 points. Nuts. Game 6 was followed by another 40-point game by LeBron. Triple-double in Game 7 by LeBron. The famous block. Kyrie with the shot, which is actually called the shot, to get Cleveland their first championship in any sport in over 50 years. And they will always be remembered. And even though Kyrie left, he would always be loved in Cleveland for that. 2016. 2017, Golden State looks totally different because they signed the second best player in the world, Kevin Durant. Still the biggest bitch move in history for him to go from Oklahoma City, which should have been in NBA Finals in 2016, to go join him in 2017. And in that series, the Warriors won in 5 pretty easily. Game 4 that Cleveland won, they had to literally break records just to beat them one time. They had to hit the most threes ever in an NBA Finals game to get one victory over Golden State. It was pretty much a gentleman's sweep. So I just did that little recap to remind you of what we're looking at. But this year, of course, it's totally different because there's no Kyrie Irving. And Golden State still has their same team with Kevin Durant. Even though you're a Cleveland fan, as a basketball fan, are you a little disappointed to see this again in the NBA Finals?
I mean, if I was not a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, I think I would probably be pretty disinterested in this NBA Finals to see it for the fourth time in a row. I actually saw, somebody I posted on Facebook, made me feel kind of old that he said this, but I saw somebody posted on Facebook, there has not been an NBA Finals in my adult life that has not featured LeBron James and Steph Curry. And I was just like, first of all, damn, you're young. And then I thought to myself, God, that's right. I mean, it's been 4 years that it's going to be these same exact two teams in the finals. And if you're not a fan of either one of these teams, yes, it is historic basketball because LeBron James is arguably one of the, if not the greatest player of all time. And he's breaking records and making history. But still, if you're not a fan, if you're one of the haters, it's got to be getting boring for you guys. Sorry.
Yeah, for me, I'm disappointed only to a certain extent. Last year was a lot more disappointing for me than this year because if you remember last year, Golden State swept in the first 3 rounds. Cleveland only lost 1 game in the first 3 rounds. And then we knew they had no chance against this team with Kevin Durant. This year, we pretty much know they have no chance against this team with Kevin Durant. But the difference is the lead up to the finals. We finally saw the Warriors get challenged with Kevin Durant and go 7 games. LeBron had to go 7 games twice to get to this point. So I don't want people to forget how good the playoffs were themselves leading up to the NBA Finals. Last year's playoffs were so bad. Cleveland was pretty much just wrecking everybody. They had a few comebacks in there that were crazy. I remember the 26-point comeback against the Pacers and stuff like that. But most of the time, they were just wrecking through people. The Warriors just wrecking through people. And then once they got to each other, they didn't even bring that. Usually when you have two teams who are both just wrecking through their conference, you'll have this mega matchup. But last year, the Warriors just wrecked through Cleveland once they got there. This year, of course, we've had the challenges. And people always say there's never been parity in the NBA. You're right, but there's always been competition. That's all we want. We want just a little drama, little competition. Make me somewhat believe something different can happen. And that's what happened this year. You at least fooled me into believing Houston could win. Like last year, I didn't even get fooled into that. At least let me believe in Santa Claus for a little bit. Don't just tell me at 2 years. Don't just tell me at 2 years old that he's not real. Give me until at least 7, 8, 9 years old so I can live in that fantasy for a little bit. Let me be a child. That's what sports is. Sports is childhood. I didn't even think about this beforehand. It just came to me. Sports is ultimately us living in our childhood and just having fun. And last year, I felt like that fun was taken away because we already knew what was going to happen. The finals, I feel like this year, without Kyrie Irving, I really don't see them having a chance. What are your thoughts on it? Do you feel that Cleveland has any bit of a chance in the series?
I mean, I have to because I'm a fan. I have to think that they have a chance. If I took my heart 100% out of the equation, I would say, you know what, it's pointless. Golden State is going to win it all. But if you look at the fact that LeBron James has been having this epic season, he has been carrying this team. If you look at the fact that Golden State was pushed to 7 games, you never know what can happen when it comes to injuries, that sort of thing. So there's always a chance, and I'm going to believe there's a chance until statistically it becomes impossible. I would not, however, be putting any money, any prize bets, or anything of that nature on the series, but I have to believe in my team because they're your team. You always believe in your team.
Yeah, definitely. I'm right there with you on that. My Pelicans went against Golden State in the second round, and I was right here saying my Pelicans have a chance. So you have to believe in your team, but you at the same time, just as what we do, there's a side, it's become natural now to take yourself outside of your team. For me, at least, it's become natural now to be like, okay, I have to take myself outside of the fandom for a bit and look at it objectively And in the day, I was like, okay, maybe we could win 2 games when I was talking about the Pelicans because we have Anthony Davis, we have good defense. But with Cleveland, even though I'm not a fan of Cleveland, of course I want a good series just as a basketball fan. I would want this to go 7 games and be great. But without a secondary superstar in a Dwayne Wade or Kyrie Irving to help out LeBron, what are you going to do against 3 superstars in Kevin Durant, Steph, Clay, who's very underrated superstar, and Draymond, who's the rating defensive player of the year? It's just too much. And Houston proved me wrong. Houston did prove me wrong and made it a great series. But they have a system and players that fit that system that were made just to beat Golden State. This Cleveland team was made to survive. You talked about how this team was rebuilt twice. The Kyrie Irving trade, which at the time looked great. I thought it was a good trade. You get Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, the Nets draft pick, and a few other pieces. But Isaiah Thomas wasn't ready with his hip. Jay Crowder didn't work out, even though he did work out for Utah. So maybe that was just Cleveland. Pick up Dwayne Wade, Derrick Rose, all these players that look like they can be a part of the team. And it's very weird that those players that were in Cleveland first half of the year went other places and produced. I just want to get your thoughts on that as a LeBron fan and a Cleveland fan. What are your thoughts on players that were there at first and couldn't play in that system, but then went other places and thrived? Do you think that's a LeBron James issue, a Ty Lue issue? It's just chance? What do you think happened where those players like Jay Crowder produced in Utah, Derrick Rose even in Minnesota produced, Dwayne Wade, we saw him getting flashbacks of being Flash in Miami. Why did those players produce in other areas but weren't able to do it in Cleveland?
I mean, if you look at somebody like a Derrick Rose, and if you look at somebody like a Dwayne Wade, these are people that are, used to being kind of more of a leadership role. They are the kind of players that like the spotlight. And you can't be that guy in Cleveland because that guy is always going to be LeBron James. And I think that a team, if you're going to be a superstar on a team with LeBron, you have to have enough time to build up the kind of chemistry and to kind of figure out what role you're going to play. Like him and Kyrie, they did it perfectly, but then even Kyrie got sick of being, kind of overshadowed. He wanted that spotlight on himself, and I think that that's a lot to do with it. I mean, people say that when it comes to being a superstar, LeBron makes people better. But in order for LeBron to make you better, you need to be able to say, hey, I'm not the superstar. And the reason why everybody that is in the NBA wanted to be an NBA player was so they could be that superstar. I want to be like Mike. They want to be the guy. And I think it's a little bit demoralizing for somebody that first comes into the system just to know that they have zero chance to be that guy. Even though Dwayne Wade did play with LeBron before, I mean, they've been broken up for a little while, and sometimes, once you're broken up and then you get back together, you realize why you broke up with that person to begin with. So I do think it's a hard thing to play with a guy that is always going to be better than you. And it's hard to get used to.
That's a very good point. Very good point. With LeBron, that is all about LeBron. Even though he tries his best to make it about his teammates, he had a great speech at the end of Game 7 where he talked about how in organized sports, that is all about the team, which is true. It is true in statement that it's a team sport. But we all can see when you get 40 points, say Game 2, for example, you get a 40-point triple-double, you guys still lose by 15, your teammates aren't there. That's what that means. It means your teammates that we're criticizing are being correctly criticized. That's what it means. So I understand what you're saying. I do think that those players that succeeded in other areas and on other teams got maybe a breath of fresh air and a restart. I do think in Cleveland it's just a stressful situation. Even the new players, I think, have felt that stress because it's high expectations at all times of playing with LeBron. And like you said, Dwayne Wade experienced that, but he got away from that for a little bit. And when he got back to Miami, he seemed rejuvenated and was able to. He also lost some weight, I think that helped out as well. And you could sell in his face that he lost weight when he went to Miami and got back in condition. And those players, like you said, are used to being stars. But even Derrick Rose, took a bench role for Minnesota and was able to, exceed in that area. Now let's get some predictions and keys here for the finals, for Cleveland to have a chance. Outside of LeBron, who do you think has to show up?
I think it's not so much who has to show up. I think it's Golden State has to not show up. But, I mean, we need some of these, kind of key guys that we don't usually talk about, like the J.R. Smiths of the team. We need them to make those shots. We need them to show up every single game. It seems like some of these guys, they show up when they want to. Tristan Thompson shows up when he wants to. J.R. Smith shows up when he wants to. Kevin Love is either hot or he's not. I haven't seen the latest on his injury, so I don't know what's going on with that. But the entire team needs to show up every night. You can't just say, oh, LeBron's going to get us through. I mean, this is the final. Everybody needs to show up to play, and everybody needs to show up to win. And I think that LeBron needs to go in with the mentality that he has to carry the team, but I think that the team needs to be able to help carry him a little bit too. I think that Ty Lue needs to be smart with his substitutions. I mean, Ty Lue, don't really think a whole lot of him as a coach. It's not really, it's LeBron's team, Ty Lue is obviously the coach, but it's LeBron's team. But Ty Lue needs to be smart with the substitutions, and they all need to show up. They're a talented bunch of guys, but they're never a talented bunch of guys at the same exact time, and that's the problem.
Yeah, they definitely all need to show up, and they all need to show up, like you said, when the Warriors have a downtime. Like, there's going to be times when the Warriors get a little lackadaisical with the basketball. They just turn the ball over too easily, not making their shots. They're going to have moments. You have to take full advantage of those moments. We saw Houston take full advantage of those moments in the 3 games they won. You have to take full advantage of those moments. Third quarters, you can't fold. We know Golden State's going to come out strong every third quarter. You can't fold. And if I had to pick on anybody in particular, I would say George Hill needs to show up big on both ends of the floor. He has to stick Steph Curry as if Steph Curry was something that he wanted to hold on to dearly. Like, if Steph Curry was Beyonce and you are Jay-Z, that's how you need to stick to it. Like, you can't you can't cheat off at all. See what I did there? Beyonce, Jay-Z, cheat off.
That's good.
So you can't cheat off of Steph Curry at all. Got to be stuck to him. And George Hill is known as a good defender, but he also has to bring on the offensive end. In the games which Cleveland won in the Boston series, George Hill, showed up in all those games. Had to get a little cup of water there. So George Hill has to be big for them to win. Jeff Green has to be big. He has to come off the bench and produce right away. I don't know what they're going to do with the starting lineup. I'm not a big fan of the Kevin Love at the 5 lineup, but against Golden State it could work because they don't have a 5 that could punish you. It's not like with Al Horford on Boston. Al Horford was punishing Kevin Love. They don't have somebody like that on their team, but they do have this lineup where they have Kevin Durant at 5. You definitely don't want Kevin Love on that guy. So what do? Do you have Tristan Thompson out there who's known for being able to switch out and stick guards at limited times? It just seems too much. But I'm going to put my official prediction down. I'm going Warriors in 4. Pull out the brooms. I'm going Warriors sweep. Even though I think LeBron's going to be incredible. They just don't have enough to really withstand what Golden State is going to do, especially coming off of this 7-game series where they were able to overcome a tough team in Houston. I think it's going to propel them to sweep Cleveland. What's your final prediction?
My final prediction is going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers in 7. And if I'm wrong, everybody's going to say, you know what, Kelly's just being a homer. And if I'm right, I'm going to look like a genius. So Cavs in 7.
I respect it. Like I said, I was in the same shoes 2 rounds ago. My Pelicans So I definitely can't say anything bad about you about that prediction. So now let's get into a little sports trivia. This is where I like to challenge our guests and our people listening at home to their sports knowledge, and I always ask questions about the guests' favorite teams. So we're having a little Cavalier and Philadelphia Eagles sports trivia. Are you ready?
I'm so bad at sports trivia, and I'm probably going to get made fun of later, but let's do it.
All right, so first we're going to go with Cleveland Cavalier sports trivia. Who is second all-time in total rebounds for the Cleveland Cavaliers? Of course, LeBron is first in almost all Cleveland records. So some of these had to dig a little deeper. So who is second all-time in total rebounds for the Cleveland Cavaliers? Is it Anderson Varejao, Hot Rod Williams, Brad Daugherty, or Zydrunas Ilgauskas? Let me give it to you one more time. Who is second all-time in total rebounds for the Cleveland Cavaliers? Is it Anderson Varejao, Hot Rod Williams, Brad Daugherty, or Zydrunas Ilgauskas?
This is going back to before my time living in Cleveland. I am going to go with Brad Daugherty.
Correct. Look at you with the first one out the gates. Yes. Brad Daugherty had 4,020 rebounds during his 8 seasons with the Cleveland Cavaliers, averaging 9.5 rebounds per game. All right, for question number 2, who is the all-time leader in steals per game for the Cavaliers? Is it Ron Harper, Brevin Knight, LeBron James, or Larry Hughes? Let me give it to you one more time. Who is the all-time leader in steals per game for the Cleveland Cavaliers? Is it Ron Harper, Brevin Knight, LeBron James, or Larry Hughes?
Well, I don't think it's LeBron James. I'm going to go with Larry Hughes.
That's a very good guess. Larry Hughes was a very good defender in his time with the league, especially with Philadelphia, but not so much in Cleveland. The correct answer is Ron Harper. Yes, Ron Harper, the Chicago Bulls, famous Ron Harper, is the all-time leader in steals per game with 2.3 steals per game in his time in Cleveland. So now let's go a little football. Question number 3 about your Philadelphia Eagles, the Super Bowl champion, Philadelphia Eagles.
That's right.
Who is the all-time leader in receiving yards for the Philadelphia Eagles? Is it Mike Quick, Harold Carmichael, Deshaun Jackson, or Brent Selleck? I'll give it to you one more time. Who is the all-time leader in receiving yards for the Philadelphia Eagles? Mike Quick, Harold Carmichael, Deshaun Jackson, or Brent Selleck?
I am going to go with Deshaun Jackson, but I don't think that's right.
Deshaun Jackson was a very good...
No, it's Carmichael. It's Carmichael.
That is correct. Harold Carmichael. Yes, Harold Carmichael is the correct answer. He had 8,978 receiving yards on 589 catches from 1971 to 1983 with the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, question number 4. Who holds the record for passing yards in a single season for the Eagles? Carson Wentz, Sam Bradford, Randall Cunningham, or Donovan McNabb? I'll give it to you one more time. Who holds the record for passing yards in a single season for the Eagles? Carson Wentz, Sam Bradford, Randall Cunningham, or Donovan McNabb?
I am going to go with Donovan McNabb. I think Carson Wentz would have gotten it if it wasn't for the injury, but I'm going to go with Donovan McNabb.
That is correct. Look at you out here killing it on the trivia today. Yes, Donovan McNabb back in 2008 threw for 3,916 yards, 23 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And that 3,916 yards is still a record, which is kind of hard to do nowadays where everybody throwing for 4,000 something yards every season. So I think Carson Wentz will break that pretty soon. So now let's do a little recap for the people. Question number 1, who is the second all-time leader in total rebounds for the Cleveland Cavaliers? The answer is Brad Daugherty, who had 4,020 rebounds in his 8 seasons with the Cavaliers. Question number 2, who is the all-time leader in steals per game for the Cavaliers? It's Ron Harper at 2.3 steals per game. Question number 3, who is the all-time leader in receiving yards for the Philadelphia Eagles? It's Harold Carmichael, who had 8,978 yards from 1971 to 83. And question number 4, who holds the record for passing yards in a single season for the Eagles? Donovan McNabb with 3,916 yards in 2008. So I want to thank you for being a good sport doing sports trivia. Did you make it out alive?
Thank you. I did a lot better than I thought I would.
So now it's time for us to do Forgotten Players. Now, Forgotten Players is where we pay homage to players who may have been good but not great, great but not recognized, or players who you may have just forgotten about who we want to remind you of. Who is your Forgotten Player today, Kelly?
Well, I was originally going to make my Forgotten Player a joke, but I had too much respect for your show. So originally I was going to say, after LeBron James is now making it to his 8th NBA Finals, my Forgotten Player is Michael Jordan. But, but my real Forgotten Player, we got to go with the Philadelphia Eagles, and it is linebacker William Thomas. And he's so forgotten. My boyfriend and I, we were talking about him the other day, and we forgot his name. We had to Google him. we knew who the guy was. We knew his last name was Thomas, but we're all like, what's his first name? And yes, William Thomas. And he played for the Philadelphia Eagles as a linebacker from 1991 to 1999. He was in the league for 10 years. He played his last year with the Oakland Raiders. Before that, he played for Texas A&M, and then he was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles in the 4th round of the 91 draft. He actually went to the Pro Bowl 2 times for the Eagles. And what makes it so shocking that he's so forgotten is his stats. Let me just read them off to you. So if you remember, I said he only played for 10 years in the NFL, okay? 37 sacks, 27 interceptions, and 10 forced fumbles. And just to put it in perspective, Brian Dawkins, who is considered the greatest Philadelphia Eagles defender of all time, he had 37 interceptions, 26 sacks, and 36 forced fumbles. And he played 16 years versus William Thomas only playing 10 years. So to be in the 2020 club having over 20 sacks and over 20 interceptions in only 10 years of play, that is really impressive. But he is completely forgotten because in the 90s, the Eagles, we kind of sucked. We really did. It wasn't until Donovan McNabb got drafted that the Eagles started to turn things around. And at that point in time, we also had some amazing players on our defense, like Brian Dawkins, who made someone like William Thomas completely forgotten. So that's why he is my forgotten player, because I forgot him, and nobody else should forget him because his stats are extremely impressive.
That's a very good forgotten player. I love how you broke down the stats and how it compared to somebody like a Brian Dawkins, who is a future Hall of Famer. Now,
he's a current Hall of Famer.
Oh yes, you're right. He is a current Hall of Famer. Now, for my forgotten player, I went basketball. You heard his name earlier in trivia. He is the all-time leader in steals per game for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm talking about Mr. Ron Harper. Ron Harper was a 6'6" point guard out of the Miami University of Ohio. He was an 8th-round pick in 1986 NBA draft by the Cleveland Cavaliers. Played 15 seasons in the NBA for the Cavs, Clippers, Bulls, and Lakers. And of course, everybody remembers him winning championships with the Bulls and even the Lakers later in his career. But the Ron Harper whose talent we saw most, it was in his younger days with the Cavs and Clippers. During that time with the Cavs and Clippers, he averaged over 19 points per game, 5 assists per game, and over 2 steals. Somebody who at 6'6", could see the floor, shoot the ball, lock you down on defense, and he still had that defensive lockdown ability as he got older. That's why he was such a valuable part to those Bulls teams and even a couple Lakers teams as well. If you think about Ron Harper, he's somebody, if he played today at 6'6", playing point guard, he would be somebody who would be marveled at. The same way kind of like a Ben Simmons is now. Like, oh my God, look at this guy who's 6'10", who can dribble the ball this way and can lock you down on defense, can do all these things. And Ron Harper can shoot a little bit better than Ben Simmons could. But, of course, he wasn't as dynamic because he wasn't 6'10", 6'6". But Ron Harper is somebody who's not forgotten because he's got those championships, but his glory years, when he was the guy on the team, those years are forgotten because those teams weren't the best. You're talking about the early 90s. The Cavaliers had some good teams, but, of course, they always fell to the Bulls. And the Clippers have always been horrible, besides that recent run with CP3 and Blake. So Ron Harper, glory years are my forgotten player. today. So big shout out to, I forgot his name already. He's definitely a forgotten player. William Thomas. William Thomas, goddammit. William Thomas and Ron Harper as our forgotten players today. Kelly, I hope you had a good time on the show today.
Hey, I always have a good time on your show, Damon. It's a great show, and I love being on, so thank you.
No problem at all. Please remind the people where they can find your show and you on social media.
Absolutely. You can catch my show live every Friday from 7 to 9 p.m. on blogtalkradio.com/Momentum Shift. I am half of the Red Zone Live. It is myself and my co-host, Rashawn the Don. We break it down unscripted, uncensored, and we got some fun. We bring the sexy back to sports, and you can check us out on demand at any time on our sponsor website, goingfor2.com, goingfor2.com. And, of course, you can find me on social media at KelliRuttar, and you can find the show at the Red Zone Live.
Yes, ditto. I think I got it right that time. Ditto. I feel the same way. Definitely, I'm a big fan of hers, her show, her writing. Hopefully she gets back to writing some more as well for goingfor2.com. Make sure you follow The Real Deal with Damian Adams on Facebook, YouTube. I do a lot more videos now. Go check out the YouTube page. Follow me at The Real Deal WDA on all platforms. And until next time, go real or go home.